What's good, everybody? It's your boy Matthew Maley for MatthewMaley.com. I am back with another video for you guys. Well, anybody in the poker world knows that history just happened. Going back to last November, the potential for what just came to fruition was first discussed, and it was pretty well met with dumbfounded doubt. But to see what's happened over the past, 7 months, and to see where we're at now was huge. So for those who don't know, I tried to say referring and explaining, I think, at the same time there. I am referring to the One Drop tournament. It's called the Big One for good reason. Originally formulated by Guy Laliberte, who is the CEO of Cirque du Soleil. Actually has an awesome story himself. He started a street performer in Quebec. Next thing you know, he runs a billion-dollar industry, billion-dollar company, and plays in some of the biggest cash games around the world for poker. But last year, during the main event coverage, he actually, I think it actually happened first during the live stream, which I was watching, because that's what us poker players do. We watch live streams. Thank you, World Series of Poker, for that. I know a lot of players don't like it, because it messes up some hole card stuff. Actually, something we'll get into later on in this video, but for my sake, I love it. Thank you. But he originally came up with the idea of doing a $1 million buy-in. The way he first presented it was, rather than simply $1 million buy-in, it was also going to benefit charity. So fast forward about 7 months. Well, not quite 7 months, because it's been being built up and built up and built up. And wow, did it take off. Initially, there was talk of capping it at 48 people. And a lot of the talk was, could they even get 48 people? You know, would it even be something that 48 people would be willing to put up $1 million into? I mean, and I know in the world of poker, these sums of money have started to become just insane, just astronomical. When you have people doing, $100,000 flips online. I just got done watching a video of Durr and Zygmunt flipping for almost $1 million, over, 15 hands. You see these hands, in the Durr challenge of $1 million pots between Durr and Patrick Antonius and Gus Hansen. And you see, don't even add Ivy's name to it, the videos of Ivy versus Isildur versus Durr versus, all these people is just legendary. And I think because of that, from a poker standpoint, it's gotten to be somewhat just no longer tactile. When I think about, okay, I'm going to play a $1,500 tournament, to me, playing a $1,500 tournament means that's a pretty decent, chunk of my bankroll. So when I hear, people are playing $3,000, $6,000 no limit, with $1 million on the table, especially when you're watching videos of it online or I used to be able to watch it on Full Tilt online. When you're watching it, it does somewhat numb your senses. The same way that people say, the reason America's so violent is because we see it in our movies and on TV. And I believe that in a lot of ways, it doesn't seem real. When you see by a click of a mouse, there goes 100,000. Click of a mouse, there goes 100,000. Click of a mouse, there goes 100,000. It doesn't seem real. But when you see $18 million stacked up next to a poker table to where, I mean, it's like this by like this, oh my God, by like that deep, more than that, then it hits. Oh my God, then it hits. And the whole build-up, it really didn't even seem real. It was like, oh yeah, $1 million buy-in, $1 million buy-in, oh, it's the biggest, whatever. But when it finally got to the final table and you see that money, it all seemed real. So, to give you a little bit of background, I ended up breaking down 48 players. There were 28 professional poker players and 20 businessmen. Poker players included Phil Ivey, Gus Hansen, Phil Galfond, Tom Dwan, Elke Grospillier. I believe Patrick Antonius was in it. Yeah, he was. I said Gus Hansen. I'll go into a story about Gus, actually. As well as Daniel Negreanu, Antonio Sfandiari, Sam Trickett, Brian Rast, I believe Bill Chen. No, was Bill Chen in it? I don't remember. I don't think Bill Chen was, now that I'm thinking. I'm sorry, I'm getting that confused with 50K. Mike Sexton was in it as well. And then the breakdown of businessmen, obviously Guy Laliberte, David Einhorn. Oh, also Phil Hellmuth was in it. I'm sorry, Dirk. How did I forget that one? He made the final table. Come on. As well as a bunch of other, hedge fund managers and the rich of the rich. Wall Street traders and CEOs and just the richest of the rich, if you will. The actual play started off with $3 million in chips. Blind started off at 25,000, 50,000, if I'm not mistaken. No, it had to have been less than that. I'm sorry, it had to be. I'm not sure what it started at. I apologize. I should have known that. Yeah, I really should have known that. I wasn't watching in the first level. I totally forgot that it started. It actually started at noon, and I slept late. Sorry. I didn't start watching until like 4 o'clock. But there were only, I believe, 2 people that got eliminated day 1, or maybe, no, there had to have been more than that. There had to have been more than that day 1, because day 2 they actually played all the way down to the final 9. But it really, some of the action was just crazy. There was a huge hand decently early, well, I don't even say early on, but a second day, Antonio Sfandiari, who was one of the chip leaders through the whole tournament, took out Jason Mercier, aces versus kings. And Mercier was also one of the bigger stacks, so that really had helped Antonio climb up the ranks. Brian Rast was doing really well through most of it. Oh, actually, I'll get into his final table, what happened. But actually, before any of it happened, they were running a 25K qualifier for it. And they ended up having 2 first-place finishers. So it was the final seat plus the first alternate, and then third place got $400K. And it was, like I said, $2,500 or $25,000 buy-in, 100 people. So you had $2 million seats, and then 400. Gus Hansen, actually, I believe he had already said he wanted to play, but ended up playing this, won, so he got the final seat. Sean Deeb actually took second, and when it came down to heads up, him and Gus actually took a little time out and went and had a conversation about it. And Sean had actually said in an interview with Quad Jacks afterwards that he didn't really want to play. He had initially wanted to play, but when he got down to heads up, he hadn't slept much in 3 days. He'd been playing cash all day. Then he went and played the tournament, and he just really didn't feel like that would be the sound mental choice, especially he's a grinder. As he said, he needs a good ROI to make it something that's worth his time to do. And considering the fact that you have to make the final table to even get back 800,000, not even double your money, that it wasn't worth it. So he ended up taking the money. He told a funny story how initially, because it was a qualifier, they said they were going to give him $1 million worth of Lammers, which, for those of you who don't know, Lammers are they're tournament chips. They're only $500 tournament chips, and that's what you use to buy into events if you win them on qualifiers. So think about that. $1 million worth of Lammers. Only the highest ones they come are $500. Thankfully, he was able to get it straightened out and was able to get cash and, check and, some chips. So, not Lammer chips. But, so ended up, that would have been a really cool tournament to play, especially, to end up having that kind of a payoff. So, ended up, final table was surprisingly, I don't really know why, it was 8 people this year for this event instead of 9 people. Usually the standard, final table is 9 people. But, so 8-person final table. Ended up, Mike Sexton actually went out in 9th. He was the first person to make the money. Only paid 9. Mike Sexton, I want to read it all down to you guys here. Also, Micah Mizrachi was my pick beforehand. He was in it, obviously, he was my pick. And I selected him to win it. He got knocked out day 1, so much for that. Maybe it was day 2. I think it was day 1. shitty. But ninth place was Mike Sexton, who had a pretty good showing from what I saw. Played his typical, you know, pretty tight, aggressive style, and ended up having a pretty good run. Then it got down to the final table, which the final table was Richard Young, who was a businessman, Bobby Baldwin, who technically he's listed as a businessman, but he did win a main event back in '78, and he is the essence of poker. I mean, he now is the guy who runs MGM Grand's properties, but he's got the biggest poker room in the world named after him, Bobby's Room at the Bellagio. Though I know a lot of those games are going over to the Aria now in Ivy's room, but whatever, or Ivy's league. But whatever. I still always want to play in Bobby's room. That would be my, you know, kind of heaven. But also made the final table was Brian Rast, Guy Laliberté, Phil Hellmuth, David Einhorn, who also made, I believe it was like a 31st finish back in the 2006 main event. And one thing that's cool about him, he donates 100% of his profits to charity. Or I'm sorry, 100% of his winnings to charity. And then Sam Trickett and Antonio Sfondiari. And actually, how I read that back is also how it ended up going. So pretty early on, also I want to comment on, I really liked that they ran this event essentially live. It didn't have the pre-production, post-production type of stuff that the main event does when they run that on TV. But I really liked how it happened. This was such a big event. I really feel like it was needed to see it this way. You know, this isn't something that I wanted to see tape delayed or in a month after I know who already won it. Having it 15 minutes behind was perfect. Actually, when it got down to heads up, I stopped reading the updates because I would read the updates and then it would, you know, I'd wait 15 minutes and I'd see it on TV. But thankfully, well, once it got down to, actually once it got to three-handed, I just closed my laptop and I was like, I'm going to watch it, be excited while it happens. Because you get so much more watching it than, you know, simply reading it. Plus, they were still doing the live stream, which was, I think it was on a 5-minute delay. But the problem was that did not show any hole cards. So with this, you got to see everything, whatever. One of the biggest hands, absolute huge hand, was, this is really the title shake. This was the title changer. At this point, it was 6-handed, and Brian Rast raised pre-flop with Ace-Jack of hearts. Got a call from Sam Trickett with pocket threes. Flop came up, I believe, 8-7-3, all hearts. So this is as good as it can be for, you know, for Rast here. He flops the nuts, whatever. So he ends up playing it pretty coy. I think he might have bet on the flop, gets called. I apologize, there have been so many hands, I mean, going through. I don't remember the exacts. And it happened so far back in the updates, I can't go back and find. Well, I could, but come on. Come on. But it ended up, I believe, a bet and a call. Turn card was a blank. Another bet and a call. And a river card was another 3. And sure enough, Sam Trickett had pocket threes, so now he's got quads. And it ended up, I mean, the hand pretty much played itself. Brian Rast was actually talking with Phil Hellmuth afterwards, who him and Hellmuth had gone back and forth a few different times. Hellmuth had gotten unlucky on 2 hands to Rast, and then Rast used that to his advantage and just bullied the shit out of Hellmuth on like 3 or 4 different hands. And of course, Hellmuth doing his typical, this guy just wants to donk off his chips to me, da-da-da-da-da type of thing. And he ended up, it was a huge pot. It ended up, I think, being like a $30 million chip pot, and ended up put Trickett back into the lead. Trickett and Antonio Sfondiari had been going back and forth, you know, pretty much since day 2 to take the lead, and it ended up going, you know, then to Trickett pretty substantially. So Rast was pretty shell-shocked, to be quite honest, but you know, what can you do there? You know, honestly, like, what can you do? Next out was Guy. Guy ended up, I'm sorry, and Bobby Ball went out in 7th. I should have mentioned that. I apologize. But Guy went out in 5th, and it ended up, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember the, oh, it was a coin flip. It was Ace King versus Queens. Just basic Ace King versus Queens. What can you do? And it was fun. They actually, Guy and Antonio are pretty good friends, so they both put on clown noses that Guy used to wear back in the day. And he actually pulled it out earlier when he was all in. It was pretty cool. But ended up Ace King versus Queens. King hit on the turn. That was it. So Guy was out in fifth. Next was Phil Hellmuth. Hellmuth ended up pushing with Ace 10 and got called by Ace Queen, I believe. Or maybe it was Ace Jack. He actually no, it was Ace Queen. Because the flop came up Jack 10 something. So we outflopped him. But then on the river, he hit a straight. So that was that. Or maybe it was a flush. Yeah, it was a flush. On the river, it was a flush. I think it was a flush of hearts. So that was that. And then David Einhorn ended up going out in third with King. He ended up shoving with King 9. And Antonio made a pretty decent call. He thought about it for a while, and he made a pretty decent call with King 10. And they both spiked their kicker, and it held up. So got down to heads up. And one thing another thing I want to comment on ESPN is they kept a timer of each thing, which I liked. You actually got to see the level of thought process, you know. A hand earlier in the tournament, Gus Hansen thought for almost 9 minutes. And I like that. I mean, I know that a lot of people don't like that element of poker, and a lot of people like online for that reason. But these guys weren't Hollywooding. This was for $18 million for first place, you know? Like, take your time. You don't need to be calling bets before they're even in there. So I really liked that they did have the time. I thought that was a cool aside, if you will. So ended up down to heads up. Going into heads up, Antonio had a huge chip. We did over 100 million, and if I'm not mistaken, Sam only had like 32 or something. There were a couple big pots. They played back at each other, and Sam ended up evening it up a lot more. But then he took a huge pot from Antonio did with Ace King, flopped the King. Sam had raised pre-flop. Antonio called, flopped the King. And Antonio bet, Sam raised, Antonio called, turn card hit an 8, so now Sam paired up. He bet again, Antonio called, and on the river, third heart fell, which is kind of a scare card. Antonio checked, Sam thought about it for a while, and then he ended up checking behind. So that was a huge pop back. I mean, I want to say probably like a 30, 40 million chip pot, something close to that. It was a big pot. So ended up widening the gap again, and then all the money ended up going in. I'll actually read it word for word on the last one here, because it was an interesting last hand. With the 2.5 lead, it was Antonio had a 2.5 chip lead going into heads up play. It only lasted 16 hands. Trickett started to chip back up, but then another big hand was Antonio made trip 9s that knocked him back down, and then all the money went in just a few hands later on hand 85 of the final table. Antonio had the button and raised to 1.8 million. Trickett called, and the flop came out Jack 5-5, 2 diamonds and a club. On the flop, Trickett checked, Antonio bet. They didn't actually say what the amount was, but it was probably in the range of 2 million. And Trickett came back over and check raised to 5.4 million. Antonio re-raised to 10 million, and then Trickett re-raised to 15 million. And starting the hand, Trickett only had, I think, like 35 million or so, or 30 million. So that was essentially putting them all in. Antonio re-shoved, and you pretty much knew that it was either, you pretty much knew it was 3 of a kind versus a set. Versus a flush going in. I mean, flush draw. That's just, even Olivier Bousquet, who was doing the commenting, it was actually supposed to be Antonio Sfondiari if he didn't make the final table. He did, so Olivier Bousquet, who I think is a great player, he's a great heads-up player, so I liked his heads-up analysis. Even said that this is what we're looking at. And sure enough, Sam called, rolled over Queen 6 of diamonds. Antonio rolled over 7-5, 3 of a kind. And turn card came a 3, river card came a 2, both of hearts, and just like that, Antonio took it down. So huge shout out to Antonio. It was a great play. He was on. Like, he even said to Kara Scott Chad, Kara Scott, is it Kara Scott? No, it's just Kara Scott. I call her Kara Scott Chad because Norman Chad always talks about wanting to marry her. Wow. Wow. I think. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, Kara Scott had interviewed him at the beginning of the final table, and he said, when I win this tournament, he told everybody, I'm going to win this tournament. And he did. He came through, and good for him. Awesome moment when they were interviewing him. They actually brought Guy up to give him the bracelet. They made this sick-ass platinum bracelet with like a blue center, and it had a drop in the middle of it. Sick-ass bracelet. As much as I'm not a big fan of the 2012 gold bracelets, this one was illmatic. Super hot. So, ended up really cool moment. As Guy presented it to Antonio, Antonio brought his dad up, and his brother, I believe, as well. And Antonio presented the bracelet to his dad and said, this one's for you. So it was really cool. Really like one of those little, you know, goosebump-inducing moments, if you will. So it was definitely a cool moment. And it was great to see for Antonio. He's always been somebody that I liked. He's a really cool guy. I talked to him a few times at the series, and he always was really cool. So big shout out to Antonio. I'm going to try and find him. Maybe he'll bank me. You got 18 million. Why not throw 100 my way? Who knows? He could win the main event, or he could at least have a part of the main event thanks to me as well. Maybe. Antonio, if you see this video, I'm a struggling poker player. Hook a brother up. I won't get to the point of begging, but you're a cool guy. I'm a somewhat cool guy. Probably not as cool as you, because you got 18 million reasons why you're cooler than me. But you can still back a winning horse or something like that. I'm like, I don't know, Seabiscuit. Winning horse. I quit. I don't know horse analogies. I apologize. But anyway, there you go. Quick. I can't say quick. That was a long-ass wrap-up of the one drop. The big $1 million buy-in for the platinum bracelet and $18.3 million. Also, Sam Trickett took down $10 million for second place. This is his fourth six-figure or above cash in the last year. Dude's doing it. Good for him. David Einhorn took down $4.3 million. All going to charity. Phil Hellmuth, 2.6. Guy took down 1.8. Brian Ras, 1.6. Bobby Baldwin, 1.4. And Richard Young, 1.2. Also 1 million, like 80,000 or something, I think, for Mike Sexton. So, incredible tournament. Unprecedented, historical, groundbreaking, all those things. I'm super excited to see what's next. Guy said because of the turnout from it that it's very possible to do it again. He said possibly not every year, but maybe every 2 years. But who knows? It's going to be exciting to see either way. So I pray one day I get to play it. Even if I have to sell like 99% of my action, it would still be cool as hell to play. So we'll see what happens. Definitely was cool for poker and a big deal. Honestly, a very big deal. So at the end of the day, poker history was made. I was there to watch it, and you guys just got my recap of it. So till the next video, I'm signing off. Thank you as always for checking out my videos. I am Matthew Maley. This is MatthewMaley.com. You can check out all the rest of my videos on MatthewMaley.com, or you can check them out on YouTube. Search for Matthew Maley Poker. Got everything on there where you can like, comment, and subscribe. You can also check me out on Facebook. All the videos are loaded from the past summer. I haven't put the rest of them on there. I don't think I'm going to go further than that back. If you guys want to see anything further than that, go to my website directly. You can also check me out up on Twitter. I'm at Matthew Maley and got all my tweets there. So until the next video, I'm signing off. Peace out, everybody. Hope y'all doing well. I know I am. I love Vegas. I love the World Series. And I would love to have a good run of poker. Then I'd be doing great. Not as great as Antonio Sfandiari, but close. Peace out.